Thank you. Thank you. I am Judy O'Brien. I'm the director of the middle school, and it's my privilege to welcome you to the SEEK Scholars Recognition Assembly. SEEK is an acronym for Scholars Engaged in Extending Knowledge, and we are in the 14th year of this signature middle school program. From the program's inception and still today, SEEK broadens the middle school experience for those 7th and 8th graders who participate. Each year, we witness that given support and encouragement, our middle school students have the imagination, the determination, and the problem-solving skills required to achieve high levels of academic excellence as they delve deeply into independent study projects with discipline and passion. Thank you all for being here, for coming together as a community to honor their scholarship. Thank you to the students, the faculty, staff, friends, and families of our 2019 SEEK Scholars for helping us honor them today. The SEEK Committee would also like to acknowledge all of the students here today in the theater who've participated in the SEEK program during their time in the middle school. Please stand if you have completed a SEEK project. So you all know, perhaps more than any of us, that the amount of independence and focus needed to complete a SEEK project requires each scholar to be self-motivated and inspired by the work at hand. A grade is not awarded for this effort. Students choose to do a SEEK project alongside their regular coursework. And this afternoon, we honor that scholarship and celebrate them for their true love of learning. A SEEK scholar may choose to explore a topic that is an extension of work she's done for a specific class, or she may opt to study an area yet untapped by the middle school curriculum. With topics this year ranging from Japanese woodblock printing, catastrophes in American history, and saving the Nashville crayfish through phytoremediation, these scholars combine disciplined research with creative and original thinking to produce their final products. Throughout the year, each SEEK scholar works closely with a faculty mentor, and over the last 2 weeks, our SEEK scholars made presentations to the SEEK Faculty Committee for their feedback and final review, and then also this week just presented their projects to their middle school peers. On behalf of our SEEK scholars and our community, I would also like to thank our SEEK Faculty Committee today and for their incredible dedication to the program. Their enthusiasm is inspiring, and I am grateful for their steady leadership. I would like to ask them to please stand as I say their names. Mr. Benny Abraham, Dr. Yelena Genumayan, Ms. Melissa Rick, Ms. Ann Regal, and special thanks to the chairperson of our SEEK Faculty Committee, Ms. Garen Eady. Please join me in giving them a round of applause. I would also like to thank the faculty and the staff and volunteers who have served throughout the entire school year as mentors to our SEEK scholars. That involves a commitment onto itself, and I'm grateful to all of you for the time and again, enthusiasm, commitment to the program. Without your time, talent, and energy, we would be unable to sustain the work of our SEEK program, so thank you. Please join me in giving the mentors a round of applause as well. And now, Mrs. Hill, our head of school, will introduce a very special guest speaker who's joined us today.
Dr. Appy Frenchman attended Harpeth Hall from 6th grade through 12th grade and is a graduate of the class of 1994. During her time, go ahead, 1994, let's hear it. During her time at Harpeth Hall, Dr. Frenchman served as Secretary of the Honor Council, Editor-in-Chief of Milestones, and Vice President of Cum Laude. She was also chosen to be the senior representative in the Lady of the Hall Court and received the Director's Award in the upper school. After graduating from Harpeth Hall, she attended the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. She then went to the University of Tennessee in Memphis for medical school before completing her residency in internal medicine at Rush University Medical Center in Chicago. Dr. Frenchman has been fortunate to have worked in private practices in Miami, Chicago, and New Jersey, and her patients range from adolescents to 102. She moved back home to Nashville 7 years ago and enjoys time with her husband and 2 children and being close to grandparents. Dr. Frenchman currently works at Heritage Medical Associates. She has given back to her community over the years and currently serves on the board of the Women's Fund a Grant Making organization that supports women and girls. Dr. Frenchman, thank you for joining us this afternoon as we honor our middle school Sikh scholars. Please join me in giving Dr. Frenchman a warm Harpeth Hall welcome.
Thank you. We're still doing that. That's exciting. Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me? I'm terrified. I'm really nervous. I have not spoken to a group this big since I was 16, 25 years ago at Harpeth Hall, so you're just going to have to bear with me. I also did not sleep well last night, so I had coffee for the first time in 6 weeks, so I'm a little jittery. So you might see a Cirque du Soleil show later. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I just wanted to, before I start, acknowledge you girls. This Sikh program is incredible, and of course it wasn't here back when we were here 30 years ago, but just you girls, it is impressive. It is unbelievable. As I was reading it, I was blown away by your topics. I'm gonna get emotional already. Too soon. And just reading about OCD and immigration and things that I didn't even know what that stuff was until my 20s. So bravo, you guys. I just wanted to say, I'm so excited that we are honoring these girls, and I'm very honored to be able to honor them with you. So I started Harpeth Hall in 6th grade. And I was coming from Hendersonville. I don't know if you have any Hendersonville people in here. But back then, it was kind of a big deal. It was a big commute. I was a year younger than everybody else. I didn't know a soul. So it was intimidating, you know, but I got through it. It was fine. And then I got to high school, and high school just kept getting better and better. And I joined organizations and got involved, dance clubs and yearbook. And it's a wonderful way to feel a part of things. It's just keep getting involved. So things were going pretty well. And then I just was doing well. I applied to college. I went to University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, which is an amazing school, by the way, if anyone's interested. But it is a big school. It's a really large school. There are 10,000 people in my freshman class. So 500 people in one chemistry class. And so here I am going from a class of 60 to that. And I got swallowed up. You know, I'm sure you've heard the term, they weed you out. I got weeded out. And I've struggled academically, and I actually did pretty poorly academically. You know, this all sounded good in my house, in my bathroom, looking at my mirror, and I'm wondering if Jess Hill is going to get some emails tomorrow. Like, what kind of Debbie Downer failing out of college? No, I didn't fail out of college, but I did really poorly, and I did, and I bring this up because it was my first experience with failure. And, you know, we all fail, right? We all fall off our bike, and we don't get first place at a track meet, or we don't, you know, get student council president. But this was real. This was real life for me. And I came from a family of doctors. Parents were doctors. Sister's a doctor. Her husband's a doctor. I mean, I can keep going. And so then I started to question that. I started to question, am I meant for this? Because I can't even make it through college. So I took a couple of years off. The first year I moved to Memphis, and I lived with my sister, who were very close, and I'm sure she and her husband loved having a 21-year-old in their house as newlyweds, but it was one of the best years of my life. And then I moved to Boston, and I worked at Harvard on projects and anorexia. And, you know, after that happened, all of a sudden, things just started clicking. And I didn't get an epiphany, and I didn't get a revelation or anything. I just figured it out that I did want to be a doctor, and I was ready to go to medical school, and that's what I did. So I had this 2-year hiatus, and I went to medical school in Memphis, and then I went to residency in Chicago. And residency is when you're training, so you decide what you want to do, and then you do 3 years. So I did 3 years, and it was incredible. It was an affirmation for me. Like, I don't mind staying up 36 hours to help patients, and I don't mind going to school, to work at 4 a.m. So it was good. It was good. It was my shining moment. I feel like life is like that. It's these ups and downs, and Harpeth Hall was my shining moment. College, not so great. residency was affirming where I wanted to be. So I got through that, and I started having jobs in different cities and following my husband around. And then I decided to move back to Nashville in 2012. So I had a job lined up, and it was all set, and we went to dinner in Nashville, and I went back up to New Jersey, and I didn't get any phone calls. And I thought, well, that's weird. You know, where's the paperwork and all that stuff? So I called my chief medical officer of the group, and I said, hey, I was just wondering what's going on. He said, I'm so sorry, Appy. I don't know how to tell you this, but that's just not going to work out. And I thought, what do you mean it's not going to work out? He's like, I'm sorry. It's just, it's not a good fit. You guys, I was devastated. I was so upset. I was hurt, and I took it personally. And here I am, moving to my hometown. I couldn't find a job in primary care. And I called other people. Nobody called me back, and it was a 6-month process. And so finally I ended up calling the VA. And for those of you who don't know, that's where our veterans go. So Army, Air Force, Marines, and got 2 years in that experience, listening to these brave men and women, listening to their issues, treating them, making them feel good, becoming friends with their families. And that was a truly rewarding experience that I will repeat any day of the month. And it was wonderful to learn about that, gain respect for them. I'm an Indian, I didn't have relatives that did World War II and Vietnam and stuff. So it was a great learning experience for me, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. But it didn't end up being my end of the path, so I am in private practice now, and it's all worked out, and I love my colleagues, and I love my nurses, and I love my patients, and I've become friends with many of them, and I'm happy and I'm fulfilled. So I put these personal stories out to you, very personal, these trials and tribulations kind of out on the table to you, not to tell you to go home and make D's, you know, or to take a 5-year sabbatical, you know, not go to college. I mean, that's not what this is for. It's more to tell you that, you know what? You have more time than you think. And success after failure is actually much sweeter. And it's not this beautiful 45-degree line trying to go on that path to success. It's actually like this for most people. Some people have that line, but most people don't. It's bumpy, and it's circuitous, and there's roundabouts. And you have to learn from that. And I think success after failure is not only sweeter, but it's more meaningful, and you don't take it for granted. And in my opinion, learning how to handle failure is far more difficult and much more important than learning how to handle success. And I think that's a valuable lesson. So how did I get through that stuff? And there's about 10 things I could mention, and in the interest of time, I'll mention 2. One of them is resilience, and one of them is support. And if you don't know what resilience means, it means bouncing back from something difficult. And I didn't have that when I was young. I was a sensitive soul. I mean, you looked at me the wrong way, I'd, you know, go home crying. But I see that in my children. I have a 9-year-old daughter, and I'm like, where did you get this? She just lets it roll off her back. Fight with a friend, bad grade on a test, she's fine. And I learned from that. She's a role model to me. And I think we either have that or we don't. And if we don't, we gain it through experiences. And the other thing that I had is support. I had so much support from my parents and from my friends. And I have to mention my 3 best friends right back there, Holly, Rachel, and Josephine. And Beth made it. Beth made it from work. And we are this core group of friends that have kept in touch for 30 years. And they're here to support me. And it's our 25th reunion this weekend, so we're going to get all the festivities started. But I had that support. And if you guys don't feel like you have that support with parents or friends, just look around you within these walls. You know, and nobody asked me to say this, but Harpeth Hall has more support than any other experience I've ever had. It is overwhelming, and it is endless, and it's warm. And from the first day of 6th grade to the last day of senior year, I could always just walk into a classroom and ask for a hug from a teacher or a secretary or a director. And I had that support, and I hope you guys do too. And don't take it for granted, because it's not everywhere. And use it when you need to. So friends, I wanted to end with 2 quotes, and I'm embarrassingly getting out my phone because it's 2019 and I don't have a printer, so excuse me. And the phone is the bane of my existence as a mom and as a doctor, but here I am. But one of them is from Henry Ford. My parents always used to tell me this, and they said, the only real mistake is the one from which we learn nothing. So yeah, we can make mistakes and we can wallow in our pity, or yeah, we can just brush them off, but what about if we learn from them? Then our success is going to be that much stronger. And this one is from an athlete, so I challenge you to see who said this. I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. Any guesses? Oh my gosh, yes, Michael Jordan. And I'm not a basketball person, but I loved that quote. And I think that if Michael Jordan, being the greatest basketball player of our time, can miss 9,000 shots, then I think everybody in this room can have some ups and downs, and we're going to be just fine. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Frenchman. So now we have a chance. We aren't able to have each girl present their projects to everybody. I wish that we did, but we'll have a chance to get a brief overview of their projects, and they've created some slides for you to get a visual of it. And I'll ask Mrs. Hill and Ms. O'Brien and Dr. Frenchman to come up so that we can award them their medals. Julia Allos conducted a comparison study of the musical styles of composers from two different eras, Beethoven from the classical romantic period and Yuruma, a 21st century New Age composer. She methodically analyzed and compared Beethoven's Moonlit Sonata and River Flows in You by Yuruma, focusing on the type signature, key signature, tempo, dynamics, and other musical properties. Julia used her increased understanding of music theory and the techniques of Beethoven and Yuruma to create a musical composition of her own. The lyrical piece, which she titled Tranquility, is soft and flowy, similar to Yuruma's style, and yet is in a minor key, similar to Beethoven's style. Julia's mentor was Laurie McDermott. Inspired by her father's military experience and her passion for flying, Isabella Baldwin completed her SEEK project on the development of military aircraft technology since World War I and the effects of technological advancements on the future of aeronautics. She extensively researched the development and use of jet aircraft and helicopters and unmanned aircraft during wartime, as well as the background of flight and aircraft production rates throughout historically significant wars. To represent and synthesize her research, Isabella created a timeline to show the sequence of events in the development of aircraft. Based on her research, she created a model that demonstrates her vision of future military aircraft and discusses the new role that unmanned aircraft might create for military pilots. Isabella's mentor was Barbara Ball. Josie Beavers combined two of her favorite things for her SEEK project, her loves for writing and traveling. After visiting Australia in 2017, she began to wonder more about the country's history. She was specifically curious about Australia's colonization and the effects on its indigenous people, known as the Aborigines. Josie researched how the first Western settlers were convicts sent over from England and how their settlement disrupted the Aboriginals' way of life. Using her knowledge, she crafted a short story focusing on a female convict and an Indigenous boy. Writing from two different points of view, Josie's story dives deeper into the external struggle and the internal conflict that both groups faced as one gained land and the other lost theirs. Josie's mentor was Mary Wheeler. Sarah Brahm's goal was to create an environmentally friendly method to save the endangered Nashville crayfish. To achieve this goal, Sarah started by researching the Nashville crayfish, Nashville water quality, and various solutions to water contamination, including phytoremediation. Phytoremediation is a scientific concept that uses the roots of plants to improve water and air quality. Sarah determined that phytoremediation using the common water hyacinth was the best solution for purifying the Mill Creek watershed, the habitat of the endangered Nashville crayfish. With this solution in mind, she designed and created a prototype of a storm drain filtration system that uses phytoremediation and the water hyacinth to improve water quality. Sarah sent a letter to the Director of Metro Water Services, Scott Potter, and to Nashville's Mayor, David Briley, to propose the use of phytoremediation in Nashville. Sarah's plan redesigned storm drains to include filters that use the common water hyacinth to purify the Mill Creek watershed. Sarah's mentor was Amy Emerson. Lily Cashin studied the art of Japanese woodblock printing for her SEEK project. First, she researched the history, artists, and masterpieces of Japanese woodblock printing, including Katsushika Hokusai, who focused his work on Mount Fuji. Lily applied her research and trends she saw in historical Japanese woodblock prints to create 4 printing blocks, each featuring Mount Fuji in a different season. The first 3 blocks were carved and printed in one color. In her final block, illustrating Mount Fuji during the spring, she used a large piece of linoleum and printed the image with 4 colors. Lily used a reduction printing technique on the final block, and she carved and printed the piece section by section, matching the placement of the ink and printing each color in layers. Her prints showcased Mount Fuji from different perspectives, seasons, and time periods. Lily's mentor was Susie Elder. Priyanka Chigaluri studied historical and modern American immigration policies and acts, starting with the beginning of America's Gilded Age in the 1890s and ending with President Trump's current immigration policies. Priyanka also read and researched opinion editorials from various newspapers, including the Tennessean and the New York Times. For her final product, Priyanka wrote an op-ed about how President Trump's immigration policies, including building a border wall, mimic one of America's most restrictive immigration acts, the National Origins Act of 1924. Her piece is titled, "Donald Trump and the Wall Resurface America's Xenophobia from 100 Years Ago." Finally, she submitted her op-ed to the upper school paper Logos and the Tennessean. Priyanka's article will appear in the May edition of Logos. Priyanka's mentor was Judy O'Brien. Inspired by her own community, Arthi Govindaswamy completed a SEEK project focused on photography, immigration, and the power of images. She studied the work of Jacob Riis, Augustus Sherman, Bud Glick, and John Moore, 4 photographers who documented immigrants from around the world and their experiences immigrating to and settling in the United States from the 1800s to today. In addition, she explored the Indian community in Nashville and the history of Indian immigration to the United States. Lastly, she researched U.S. immigration laws and historical trends of immigration. Arthi used her research to create 2 photo essays. One documents immigration to the United States throughout history, and the other highlights the Indian community in Nashville today. Arthi's mentor was Christelle Albright. Inspired by the shortcomings of current prosthetic technology, Bella Gillimondegi began her SEEK project by researching bionic and prosthetic limbs. During her research, she learned about the differences and similarities between bionic and prosthetic limbs, including the advantages and disadvantages of each. She also researched 3D printing and the benefits 3D printing has in the prosthetic world. She found that 3D printing is starting to make prosthetic limbs cheaper and more accessible. Bella used her knowledge of 3D printing and prosthetics and learned how to use the Harpeth Hall 3D printer to print a wearable prosthetic hand. The fingers of the hand contract when the wrist is bent, mimicking new technology that converts the brain's motor signals into electrical impulses, allowing a wearer to move a bionic limb with their mind alone. Bella's mentor was Boyd Rappelt. Rachel King researched learning with Down syndrome in comparison to typically developing learners. First, she learned the most effective strategies for teaching students with Down syndrome, the best learning environments, and developmental differences of these young students. For the next phase of her research, Rachel interviewed people from 2 different learning environments. First, she met with 2 teachers involved in the Franklin Road Academy Heart to Heart program, which provides assistance and extra help in the classroom for students with Down syndrome. Then she interviewed a mother of 2 homeschooled children with Down syndrome. For her final product, Rachel created 2 lesson plans, one for 5th grade students with Down syndrome and another for typically developing 5th grade students. Her lesson plan is designed to teach about the disease of yellow fever as an introduction to the novel Fever, 1793 by Laurie House Anderson. Rachel's mentor was Fran Lindley. Lucy McNally explored catastrophes in American history and their impacts on people and communities. She focused on 3 specific disasters: the Great Chicago Fire of 1871, the San Francisco earthquake of 1906, and Hurricane Katrina. She researched the time and place of each disaster and conducted a series of interviews with witnesses and survivors of Hurricane Katrina. Using her knowledge of each time period and catastrophe, Lucy wrote fictional journal entries from the perspective of survivors of each disaster. Her pieces help the reader experience the horrors and triumphs of each catastrophe as cities and people faced disasters and rose from the ashes. Lucy's mentor was Kathy Richard. For her SEEK project, Amanda Pensinger studied Winston Churchill and how he affected the Dunkirk evacuation in the Battle of Britain. First, Amanda researched Winston Churchill and the British government system. She then learned about Dunkirk and the Battle of Britain, including what led up to each event, what happened during each event, and what role Churchill played. For the last part of her research, Amanda read and explored several of Churchill's speeches that were delivered around the time of each battle. For her product, she created infographics illustrating Churchill's actual role in each historical event, and then she considered what might have happened without his influence. Amanda's mentor was Michelle O'Brien. Alston Riddick began her project by researching ancient Roman residential architecture with a focus on the homes of Pompeii. She studied how the domus, a type of house occupied by families in Pompeii, was constructed and designed. She also studied more modern examples of residential architecture with an emphasis on iconic houses of the 1900s. She researched the history, common characteristics, and function of various examples of the two styles. Drawing from her research, Alston designed an online 3D model of a home that combined the characteristics of the Pompeian domus with the more modernized characteristics of 20th century residential architecture. Alston used her digital design to build a fully furnished, intricate 3D model demonstrating how a home with Pompeian influences and contemporary style could be built in the 21st century. Alston's mentor was Vanessa Wentz. For her project, Presley Schick researched the psychology behind interior design and how it affects our mood, energy, and brain growth. Presley started by researching key elements of design space, including line, color, texture, and pattern. Presley also studied autism and the impact of interior design on a child with autism. During her research, Presley considered how interior design can act as a therapy to people with and without autism. For her project, Presley created a vision board and a virtual room for two girls with the same interests but different emotional needs. Her project illustrates how important interior design is for our individual needs and for us to feel safe and relaxed in a space. Presley's mentor was Clark Harwell. Scarlett White studied the factors behind and characteristics of obsessive-compulsive disorder. Her research included the major elements of OCD and the struggles people with this disorder must deal with each day. She looked at the condition from both a medical and psychological standpoint. She applied her research to create vivid poetry in her book titled Mental. Using her poetic expression, Scarlett explored different perspectives on OCD. Scarlett's writing steers the reader into the subconscious of the disorder. Readers come away with increased empathy and understanding of OCD. Scarlett's mentor was Amy Mulron. Sophia Williams focused on songwriting for her SEEK project. As part of her research, she interviewed songwriters and used resources from the Berklee School of Music to understand how to write a song. Throughout her interviews and research, Sophia found that there is no one way to write a song. Songwriters start with different building blocks, whether they be musical or lyrical. After Sophia finished her research, she started the process of writing her own song. Sophia began by writing poetry and lyrics and then added chords to her words. As her final product, Sophia wrote the song Try and Fail, which is about learning from failure in order to succeed. Sophia's mentors were Rachel Van Dyke, Tricia McNally, and Joe Croker.
Wow. Amazing projects, girls. Thank you for your scholarship, your commitment, your passion. Let's give them another round of applause. These are phenomenal projects. Before we wrap up our Sikh Assembly this year, I just wanted to extend a couple of thank yous. First, I'd like to again thank Dr. Appy Frenchman, class of 1994, for joining us this afternoon and for your inspiring remarks. Thank you very much for making the time to be with us. And it feels important to again thank our Sikh faculty committee, the Sikh mentors, and all of you who are family and friends of our Sikh scholars. We know, and Dr. Frenchman talked about this in her remarks, that support is a critical element of success. So thank you to everyone in those categories. And most importantly, to our Sikh scholars, to the girls themselves, congratulations. This is an outstanding accomplishment, and your projects are simply outstanding. I was reading, the descriptions the other day and just thinking, wow, this is remarkable. I hope you feel that it is remarkable and that you're proud of yourselves. Family, friends, and mentors, please join us for a reception in Subi Hall following the assembly. We'll have a chance to look more closely at the girls' work and explore their projects and final products. And lastly, girls, before you head up to Subi Hall, please gather in the gallery for a group photo before we make our way to the celebration. So thank you again to everyone for coming together as a community to honor the middle school program, Sikh, and the girls who were Sikh scholars this year. We're really grateful for your time and your attention. And now I turn it over to the seniors.